Hi, everybody. I'm Mireille, Social Innovation Coordinator at Food Matters Manitoba, and today I'm joined by Olivia Boyce, who is the Community Engagement Lead at Food Matters Manitoba. And we're meeting to chat about community engagement and about the monthly theme for the month of October, which was bringing people together behind an idea. I am located on Treaty 1 territory in what we now in the land that we now call Winnipeg, and Olivia is located on Treaty 2 territories, the land that we now call Brandon. And before we get started with a few questions, a little bit of background about Olivia. So Olivia has coordinated lots of food skills and literacy programs over the years with Food Matters Manitoba, but also lots of community-led initiatives. She is currently, she developed and she's currently coordinating the Brandon Food Council and their activities. And lately, so latest initiative, which is really exciting, Everyone Eats, which is a totally community-led project. And I guess I would like to start talking about that. So can you just tell us a little bit about what Everyone is exactly and how it came to be?
Yeah, so Everyone Eats was a really exciting project. It's been kind of on the back burner for a while in my mind to have a flexible payment option meal program that serves healthy food. As a person with diabetes, it was really challenging to find nutritious meals that were ready to go. Typically things had too many carbs and not enough protein, stuff like that, not enough vegetables. So yeah, it's really important to me that we had a really good, solid nutrition model incorporated into it, and the flexible payment options so that it's equitable across the table, no matter how much a person makes. It doesn't change the meal that they receive. So what happened was we had one person from the Food Council, Nicholas Namus Petra, and he is the manager at BU Food Services, and he goes, "Oh, we have a kitchen and staff." And another person from our community, Ted Zogan, reached out to the BNRC, our Neighborhood Renewal Corporation, and said, I wonder if there's a way to offer low-priced meals as a way to respond to the pandemic and loss of income, loss of jobs, and all of the uncertainty that was happening in that arena. So my role was to get people around the table and say, okay, now what can we do? And yeah, it was really inspiring to watch everyone come together and brainstorm and to just come up with solutions and really work so hard to make it happen. We had Brian Henderson as well, and he spent so much time going around and seeing what kind of support we could get for food and for funding to get this off the ground. And so the way that the model works is it's a pay what you can model, and it incorporates a meal it forward option as well. So people pay more or less depending on what they're able to. And the typical price of the food, packaging, staffing costs, because we pay our staff above a living wage, which I think is very important when we're considering food security as well. So all of that taken into consideration, our costs are about $8 per meal. And so we see people paying anywhere from typically $0 to $30. Most people, you can order the day ahead. So we see that a lot of people are ordering around $2 to $4 so that they can make sure that they get that meal and they're not waiting chance not being able to get a free meal. So this year also the Christmas dinner was announced that it was going to be canceled.
Okay.
So right away the team was like, how are we gonna save Christmas, basically. You know, like, even though we can't meet in person, because the model that we have is a pandemic proof model. It's curbside pickup, and we have volunteer delivery drivers for anyone that isn't able to leave the house, or for whatever reason, you know, needs that delivery, if they're self-isolating, whatever it is. And so it also provides a safe way for community members to volunteer, where they maybe used to volunteer at the soup kitchen or like at in-person things. This now gives them an opportunity, especially for the older age group that are more concerned about health and safety and all of those repercussions. They have a safe way to be involved in the community and to see people from the window.
Nice. So it came about as a solution for a natural solution for a lot of people that are not necessarily working together usually, but that
it was completely new partnerships. Yeah. There's like, so Ross Robinson also has been heavily involved as the executive director at John Howard Society. He's been like a super core part of the group here too. And so Ross and Ted, I didn't even meet until after we got this project rolling. Like, we were like in our first week of the project, and that's when I actually got to meet them in person. Yeah.
That's great. Did you find that it was difficult to get all those partners to define common goals and to really have a similar definition of success when it came to the objectives of everyone eats? Or
everyone does come with such a different perspective, right? And you know, I found that the common theme was just that we want to make a difference in the community. We want to make sure that people are fed and taken care of. And so like John Howard Society is typically focused on like criminal justice and that side of things. So for them to be now involved in food is, you know, it really speaks to how important food and community and well-being and just taking care of people is, and how overarching of a subject that is. It's really always been about making sure that people are taken care of, people are being fed.
So that was always the leading definition of success that you went with.
Yeah, exactly.
So it did come to be naturally, I guess.
And sorry, not just fed, right? Like I was talking about before, that nutrition aspect. So we wanted to make sure that people actually, that everyone, no matter what they were making, was getting really, really good healthy meals. One of the most interesting conversations was on food waste and food waste distribution. So at the beginning, you know, we were looking at food donations and really how we can create a sustainable model, because it's kind of a cross between a social enterprise and a charity-based model, right? We have people that are overpaying as a charity, and they get a charitable receipt as well. And then we have people that are underpaying and receiving more of services. But they're still participating, even though they're receiving, right? And so I think that natural give and take is really important, to have that reciprocal relationship, so everyone's on this vertical plane, or horizontal. So everyone's on a horizontal plane. I was like, wait a minute. So we were talking about food waste and food waste distribution. So when large events were held before the pandemic, there would always be this 10% margin of food waste accounted for. And so other organizations would help to distribute that among food charities. And, you know, like it's such a cringy model, because then we're expecting people to use essentially waste, which is, you know, part of our mindset, but also like what's actually happening in not valuing people, right? It's just a reflection of not showing respect and value for all people. based on their income level, which is pretty terrible. And so, yeah, we were thinking about, like if we could incorporate food waste distribution, which is not actually waste, it's just a margin of food.
Yeah.
How we could incorporate it into our program if we wanted to. And also like how much we pay people. In this case, it's a unionized position, two unionized positions in the program. So they're paid very well. But like if the model was to ever change, just making sure that we have that as part of our value system to make sure that we're not ever going to be paying the minimum wage, which is not enough to live on and pay your basic needs, to make sure that we are taking care of people. Because if your model is based on paying people not enough, then you're not creating food security. You're not actually helping people, right? You can't not help people to help people. We were talking before too about like how to kind of get those hard to reach people that might be cynical or might just like not want to, maybe they don't want to spend much time talking about it, or they don't want to go to like community engagement events. Like having just informal conversations or having interviews or just making effort to reach out to them. Because like they're totally wealths of knowledge, right?
Yes.
And that's so important, and it shouldn't need to be on people to attend a community engagement event all the time. Like because it's a lot of effort, and it's if they feel like their voice isn't being heard or change isn't being made because of their attendance, like they're perfectly valid in feeling kind of jaded or cynical about how things are going. So just like taking the time to reach out to them and ask them the questions that you have specifically for them, like it'll make them feel heard and like their opinion and perspective matters. And then you can start building that trust, because it's really that their trust has been broken, right? That's why they feel like that. And so it takes a while to rebuild trust. And so it's really important to have those paid positions so that you have someone dedicated to the work on an ongoing, consistent basis. Because when you have those temporary positions where someone gets funding for a couple years and then the funding's taken away and the initiative stops, that's when you start to see the cynicism and the jaded people.
And it comes also from the lack of results, because there's a lack of capacity to make things happen, right?
Yeah, you need people that are committed, and you need funding that's committed for sure.
So then you'd say that as a community leader, when you're talking about meeting people where they're at, you think that it's your responsibility to go towards people, to get their opinion as much as it is their citizen responsibility to show up at events. Like you need to meet them halfway.
Yeah, and being targeted about what people are interested in. Like I wouldn't go hold an event on something that no one cares about. If no one's expressed interest on something, like there's no way I would hold an event on it.
So how do you first identify those needs and those things that people care about? Just having initial conversations within the community, just with people when you meet?
Yeah, well, let's go back to the Food Council and the development of that. So the Food Council was actually recommended in the Brandon Food Charter, and that was developed out of the Brandon Poverty Committee, and was signed by City Council here in Brandon. And so in it specifically recommends a food council to be developed to monitor and assess the local foodscape. And there was a bunch of people involved in that and in the food assessment that was done. And so, you can kind of look back and you can track the history of things and what's been needed. And then part of my position was to work with the Poverty Committee to develop a food council. So the first thing we did was hold stakeholder conversations, which was really my introduction to the work, and getting to know the people that were the champions of that work in our community, and what they care about, and to learn what they wanted a food council to do. Right? It was because it wasn't my idea. I came in and I helped the community to create it, and yeah, so that was an amazing process. And then we created a steering committee to develop the terms of reference and look for members for the food council. And so we looked at the food system really holistically to include environment and health and levels of government, people with lived experience of food insecurity, youth, elders. We really tried to make sure that a diverse representation of our population was included, so that it was a really representative of the community. And then we had a public survey as well, which was amazing. We had a link online for people to go online and fill out, but I also went to different events to reach out to people. I went to, I think it was an Indigenous Peoples Day ceremony. So I just went around with a paper copy and of the survey and just asked people questions, and was just on the ground. I went to the farmers market. I tried to go to some different places to catch different kinds of people. And one of the biggest things we heard was that people wanted to know what was going on. They were saying that there's councils and things that are doing, people that are doing things, but they didn't know what was going on. And they felt really disengaged from what was happening and the decisions that were being made and the work that was being done. Like they weren't a part of it, so they were really disengaged from it. And so yeah, so that's kind of always stuck in the back of my mind, as far as like how much we are out there in the community. Like how often do we need to get a booth at the farmers market? How often do we need to go around events and talk to people, just so that people know we're here and we're doing things and we care, and their perspective matters, even though they're not on the food council or they're not on a subcommittee or a working group, their voice still matters. And so like even looking at democracy as a whole, right? Like just creating that place is really important, but just having an engagement event and expecting people to come to you, I think engagement needs to go beyond that. Be more intentional about who you're reaching, and like just talking to them, building relationship, asking questions.
That's great. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for expanding on that. I guess I just have a last question. Based on, I was curious when you were talking about engaging people that maybe have gotten a little cynical because of all the effort that they've already put in the work and the lack of results that they've seen over the years. So, and you were saying how you need to really proactively go and ask for their input if you actually want it, and regain that trust. How would you compare your approach when it comes to youth? Because I know that you've done a lot of youth engagement and youth programs.
Youth has been such a big piece of our work. Even when we were creating the terms of reference, we wanted to make sure that we had a youth member on the council, but we had to make it so that they don't have like voting responsibility when it comes to finance, and different things like that. So figuring out logistically how we can have a person that's under the age of 18, which is legal age here in Canada, in Manitoba, on the food council was like a logistical challenge, but then also the engagement piece, especially because we only have one youth member on our food council. So what we did was we had a spot for someone that works with youth in their career, so that they could potentially be that bridge. to educate youth on food security and the food system and all of those things, and then bring them into the conversation. Because I find that a lot of youth are passionate and want to make a difference. You know, it's such an inspiring young generation that's coming up. And there's so many of them that want to be involved and have fantastic ideas that would like really benefit our conversations, right? So I'm inspired by the Toronto Youth Food Policy Council, because it's a whole group of youth that are doing their own thing. Yeah, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity for that in Manitoba, to engage youth and to help them create, but to support them in that as well. You know, there's so much education that's required as far as learning about decision makers and funding opportunities and collaboration and partnership opportunities. So I feel like we've only really just begun tapping into this whole realm. But there's so much more that we can do to engage youth. And there is a lot of education that's required still. You know, like food insecurity is a pressing issue in our province, and it affects so many children. And so to have conversations that makes youth feel like they're not alone, and that provides some perspective and background for other kids so that they know, so they have some more understanding of what's actually happening at a policy and systemic level, and what they can do, you know, like to feel helpless in your situation is, you know, it's the worst. No one wants to feel helpless. And so, you know, teaching kids about things that we can do to make change, and then empowering them to be involved in making that change, you know, I think that's really a step in the right direction.
So you feel like focusing on solutions rather than focusing on the problem is a good way to start the engagement?
Yeah, you'll find in all the work that I do, I always start on solutions first.
Yeah.
You know, like you really have to be able to see where you're going and work backwards. And like when you, whatever you look at, you build it. Whatever you see is what you create. So the first step is really getting everyone to imagine, like, what is this thing actually going to look like? And then we'll all be on the same page to build it, no matter what our perspective is, no matter what our background is, no matter what our experience is. If we all have the same vision, we're going to go to the same place.
That's great. Thank you so much for your time and for this inspiring discussion. It's been really nice.
Thank you.
Thanks.